At this time, we're going to call the meeting to order. Everyone, please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice
justice for all.
for all. Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Elder Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published in the North Jersey Herald News, the board's official newspaper, on January 12th, 2020. Notice of this virtual meeting was published on September 28th, 2020. Notices of this meeting indicating date, time, and place were posted publicly on the door of the main entrance to the school and filed with the clerk in the municipality of Haledon. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz.
Here.
Mrs. Fisher.
Here.
Mr. Jacquez. Mrs. Isa.
Here.
Mr. Moxo.
Here.
Mrs. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Ramadan.
Here.
Mr. Martinez.
Here.
And Mr. Guzman.
Here. Do we have a motion to approve prior minutes?
So moved. Approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Moxo, second by Ms. Diaz. And roll call.
Mrs. Diaz.
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. Fisher.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Jacquez, did he come on yet? No. All right. Mrs. Isa.
Yes.
Mr. Moxo.
Yes.
Mrs. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
And Mr. Guzman.
Yes, Mr. B, I don't think Mr. Jacquez is going to be able to make it tonight.
Okay. Okay.
Do we have a motion to open up the public portion to hear citizens on agenda items only?
So
So second.
Moved by Mrs. Fisher, second by Mr. Ramadan. Before we call the roll, if anyone is not talking, I ask that you please mute your phone. Please mute your device, please. Anyone in the public or any board member as well, if you're not speaking, please mute your device. There's a lot of background noise. Thank you very much. Mr. BA, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Diaz.
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher.
Yes.
Mrs. Isa.
Yes.
Mr. Moxo.
Yes.
Mrs. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
And Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Okay. Do we have anyone that wishes to address the Board of Education on agenda items only? Seeing none. Seeing none, do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Ramadan, second by Ms. Diaz. And roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz.
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher.
Yes.
Mrs. Isa.
Yes.
Mr. Moxo.
Yes.
Mrs. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
And Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Moving on to committee reports. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. As everyone is aware, this board has tried to accommodate the entire community, which includes our teachers as well, and our staff members, as it pertains to this restart, this COVID-19 restart. We've done the hybrid, we've done remote learning, all in an effort to accommodate everyone in our community. A lot of parents that really pushed us to open our schools. We have a lot of parents who wanted to keep their children home, and they felt remote learning was the way to go. Nevertheless, it was our job as a Board of Education to make these tough decisions and do what's right for our entire community. And with that being said, as everyone is aware, we had a staff member that came back positive for COVID-19. We took necessary precautions in accordance with the governor's executive orders and guidance. And Mr. Walker is going to talk a little bit more about that when I pass it on to him. But I just want everyone to rest assured that this board will continue to make the right decisions on behalf of our community. And we wish everyone nothing but the best. With that being said, I'm going to pass it on to our Chief School Administrator, our Principal / Superintendent, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, President Guzman. On Saturday, we learned that a staff member had tested positive for COVID-19. I want to begin by saying we hope this staff member has a speedy recovery. As a school, because this was the first time that we'd experienced like this, we were actually extremely cautious in our approach. The county health inspector, the county health doctor would tell me we were a little too cautious in our approach. We would have only needed to have staff members sent for testing. Staff members spent more than 10 minutes within 6 feet distance from the afflicted staff member. Like I said, I thought it was important that we be extremely cautious our first time around, so we asked that all staff members that had spent a significant amount of time in the same room as the staff member get tested. Thus far, all results we have received have been COVID negative. This includes 4 students and about 8 staff members, and we're still waiting for a few more staff members and students. Once all results come back, we will have learned something valuable. We are hopeful that we will have learned that our safety protocols are such that an afflicted person can come into the building and not spread the virus to anyone. We may also learn that this is not true, and that would influence our decisions as well. Nonetheless, the most data shows us that it's likely the virus has not spread within our school. We did decide to close for the rest of the week, however, because we've learned that 2 organizations that have close ties to Haledon Public School had COVID infections. The Junior Falcons football team, which many of our kids play on, had a coach afflicted, and a local daycare center that several of our staff members send students to also had to close down due to multiple infections. Therefore, these factors have made it such that I believe it's wiser to have the building closed for the remainder of the week so that we can learn if viral outbreaks in the organizations that we have connections with will have any impact on our building. I expect that we will be open Monday morning, and I also expect that moving forward, we'll look to only test staff that have spent more than 10 minutes with an afflicted person at less than 6 feet proximity. As always, I'll do my best to keep the school community aware of current updates and information that comes our way. And my second note is there will be 2 Zoom meetings held later in the week. Tomorrow, Ms. Barnhill and I will be talking about our Title I funding with parents that want to learn more about that. That's a 7 o'clock Zoom meeting, and parents have emailed Ms. Barnhill for the link and the password for Zoom. And on Thursday night, myself and Ms. Barnhill again will be hosting a grade 2 structure modification meeting. A bunch of parents have already emailed me for the link and the password for grade 2 structure modifications, and that'll be 7 o'clock as well. Note 3, we found out that last week we will receive about an additional $100,000 from the state of New Jersey for PPE and cleaning supplies. This is unrelated to the money we've gotten before from the federal government. So it's an extra $100,000 we can have to procure PPE and cleaning supplies. And item 4, kind of as I think we all would have expected, once I have to make that robocall to the community saying, hey, by the way, we did have a COVID staff member. We saw that the amount of students that were hybrid, we saw that a decent amount have now requested, as is their right, to only do remote only. So of course, it's an easy switch for us to make, and we're going to honor that. But the amount of kids in the hybrid program next week will be significantly less, no, not significantly, but less than is current because of the information we gained. My report.
Thank you. Moving on to our business administrator, Mrs. John Serapilio.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to go over some of the resolutions we have on the agenda tonight. We are looking for board approval on the addendum to the shared service agreements for BA services, as well as special ed, director of special ed services between Haledon and Manchester. Both addendums were approved by the Manchester Regional Board of Education at their last meeting. We also have under the agenda tonight approving a trucking agreement with Macchios. We are looking to approve our comprehensive maintenance plan. This just gives an overview of budgeted money that we have in our maintenance accounts for obviously needed maintenance of the building. Tied in with that, there was a walkthrough done of the building to ensure that it was compliant. We have to do that walkthrough every year. I had done it, I think it was last week with the walkthrough. So we're doing a board approval for the certification that was done. Other items that I wanted to just touch on, we are currently undergoing, as we do every year, our financial audit. It's a little bit different this year because we're basically supplying the documents that the auditors need, and they are, either we're emailing it to them, the stuff that we can't email, they're coming in to pick it up, to bring it to their offices. We are also continuing with our food service. We have, as we had over the springtime, we've gone with the option where those who are looking to pick up their meals, especially those who are remote, they don't need to worry about scanning an ID or anything along those lines. They're able to just simply show up and grab a meal. So it's a reminder for those on this call that we are still serving meals even if you aren't in school. So please make sure to stop by the school to pick it up. Finally, we're going to be looking at upgrading our internet access due to the COVID outbreak. They've actually reopened E-rate funding. E-rate funding is utilized to offset the cost of, it used to be for telecommunications and internet access, and now it's just the internet access. But we are looking at upgrading that from 1 gig to 2. Due to the fact that we are anticipating more internet access and more internet usage, especially during the course of this year. The upgrade would just be for this year, but obviously with the potential of keeping it in place for the future. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. BA. Moving on to personnel and management, Ms. Diaz.
Sorry, we have agenda items and 1 addendum.
Finance and physical plant operations, Mr. Ramadan.
Just agenda items only.
Curriculum and technology, Mrs. Isa.
Agenda items only.
Policy, Mrs. Perez.
Nothing at this time.
Security and safety, Mrs. Fisher.
Agenda items.
Community engagement, Mr. Moxo.
Agenda items only.
State report, Ms. Diaz.
Nothing to report.
County, Ms. Fisher.
There was a meeting last evening, but I couldn't attend. And it was just basically talking about what other schools are doing during the COVID outbreak. I'm not sure. Is anyone here? Did anyone here go to the meeting last evening? No. Yeah, but that's basically what it was. Just basically talking about COVID and how all the schools are handling what's going on.
Oh,
Very good.
Mrs. Fisher, I think there was something else. I got something from, I think, our school board rep, where it was discussing virtual meetings.
Yes.
Where it's if you're doing, and I think, I haven't had a chance to really go through it yet. I just got it, I think today, right? Because the meeting was last night, wasn't it?
Yes.
Where I think it was talking about if the board is in person, you can't just have virtual for the public, that you would have to have the option of having them come in. And that's, again, I'm going to, I want to have, more of a chance to look at it. But if that's the case, I'm going to obviously share it with the board as to, because there seemed to be something, it was, obviously there was an emergency, so we were all allowed to go virtual. And now I think they're sort of modifying those regulations. And again, I think the modifications came out, basically last week or 2 weeks ago. So
Right.
it hasn't
I don't
even.
think that they're not in play yet. So that I
Oh.
understood that they haven't,
Okay.
made anything solid right now. I believe I can find out and let you know also. But if you let us know, if you find out, that'd be great.
Yeah, like I said, it literally like I got the email today from Kathy, because I think she either attended it or got notes on it. So I actually sent it off to my association to say, is this, because usually when something like that happens, a big change, it's usually more publicized than that.
Very good. Thank you. Please keep us posted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything from our board attorney? Moving on to personnel and management on the agenda.
All right. I'm going to move items 7.1 through 7.14, including the addendum.
So move.
Okay, moved by Ms. Diaz. Moved by Ms. Diaz, second by Mr. Moxell and Mr. Martinez. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Curriculum and technology.
I want to move items 8.1 through 8.4.
So move. Second.
Moved by Ms. Isa, second by Mr. Martinez, and roll call.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Security and safety.
Okay, I'd like to move 10.1 to 10.3 with 10.2 being removed. But what was 10.2?
Let me see.
Was it the phase 2, John?
I think so.
I believe phase 2 of the restart plan, which I've removed, Ms. Fisher.
Okay.
I'm gonna second that.
Okay, Ms. Fisher is moving 10.1 and 10.3, second by Ms. Diaz. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Community engagement.
Yes. I'd like to move item 11.1.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Moxo, second by Mr. Ramadan. A roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Finance and physical plant.
Move items 12.1 through 12.2, including the addendum.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Ramadan, second by Mr. Moxo and Ms. Diaz, and roll call.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Any new or old business? Okay. Do we have a motion to open up the public portion to hear citizens who wish to address the Board of Education?
So moved.
So, second.
Moved by Ms. Diaz, second by Mr. Moxo and Mr. Martinez. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. At this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Diane Cartena.
Hi, sorry about that. I was muted.
Not a problem.
Good evening. On behalf of the Haledon Education Association, I want to thank the board and the administration for their response to the school's first COVID-19 outbreak. Obviously, it is our fervent hope that this is also our last. However, the truth is, minimizing risk of another case will take consistently upholding safety policies, constant engagement with community officials, continuous dialogue between administration and staff, tireless work by the teaching staff, and frankly, a whole lot of good fortune. As such, we want to make you aware again that the HEA is committed to a working partnership with all of these equally relevant participants. Our common goal remains the health, safety, and education of our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cartena, for your words. And again, I can't stress this enough. When you and your colleagues first came to our board, we really took what you told us into consideration. And it was a very tough decision for us. And we have the utmost confidence in our teachers. And we have all of you in mind always. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Pagani, anyone?
That was the only one I received, Mr. Guzman.
Okay. Do we have a motion to close?
Moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Who's
Yes.
the second? I'm sorry.
Moxo.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Ramadan, second by Mr. Moxo. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. No executive session tonight, correct?
None for me.
Okay.
Executive George.
Before we adjourn, I'm sorry, I was remiss in not mentioning this. Mr. Walker, I want to thank you very much. You and your team, administration, staff, been working around the clock tirelessly, keeping the community up to date. We're getting nothing but a great positive feedback from our community. regarding the transparency of our school, and that's what we're committed to. And we're going to continue doing what's in the best interest of, first and foremost, of our children, trying to properly educate them, at the same time trying to keep everyone's safety our priority. So, Mr. Walker, thank you very much, and we will get through all this together. At this time, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Moxo,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Be safe.